Last Sunday, I heard the story of a woman who had been a police officer for 13 years. And I met this woman, I shook her hand. It almost killed me with that handshake. She was strong and she was bright and she was courageous. And you know what? She stayed in that abusive relationship. Why? Because she kept thinking it's going to get better. And it never did. Now, I think that was a codependent kind of situation, false hopes, all of that, until one day he threatens to kill her with her own gun that she owned as a police officer. Well, what's my point about that? That sounds like codependency. Yeah, it is. Which, if a strong woman who carries a gun and has a strong handshake and is very bright can get into an abusive codependent relationship, maybe you ought to give yourself a break. Anybody can do it. It's not just the weak that get in these kinds of situations. From New Life Ministries, this is Going Deeper with Stephen Arterburn. I'm Stephen Arterburn. And Going Deeper is all about taking the tough issues, the hard issues of life, looking a little bit deeper inside so that we can gain some insight into our lives. Hi, Steve Arterburn here. Thanks for joining me for Going Deeper. We've been going through the alphabet on Going Deeper. It's a pretty simple concept. Let's take the alphabet, let's take a letter, and let's find a word that we ought to be working on. I love calligraphy. I just did this little C here. It stands for codependency. What is that? You know, codependency is a shaming word for a lot of people. Oh, you must be codependent. You'll just hear it said like that. But you know what? It's really a sad thing when somebody is in an unhealthy attachment to where things really get worse than better. It's a sick dependency. And you know, the other person kind of depends on you to keep their problem going when you're codependent. And there's no good outcome when a codependent is enabling a person who's dependent on something that's not very healthy. And I feel so sad when people are shamed over codependency. Now, there are some situations where people are accused of being codependent, but they've made a decision that they're going to stay in a situation because there literally is no better outcome at the time. Isn't that something? That could actually be. I was talking to a lady the other day, and she said, I feel so bad because everybody tells me I stayed in a relationship that was a codependent relationship for 13 years. And I stayed in that abusive situation, really with no voice and no freedom, no independence whatsoever, because I was afraid that I kind of knew that if I were to rock the boat, if I were to stand up and counter or just tell this guy, this can't be this way, he would leave and me and my kids would be in one desperate situation. I said, well, that's so sad that you were in that situation. What happened after 13 years? She said, I confronted him and he left and there was nothing for us. So I said, so what you're saying is you made a choice to stay in a situation that was horrible so that there would be some stability for your kids. And then finally, when they were out of the house, you decided it was time. And he did exactly what you thought he would do. Now, I don't know that was a horrible decision for you to sacrifice for the sake of stability for your children. I don't know that was codependent. That could have actually been sacrificial, godly, and it could have been the best thing that you could have ever done. You see, it's one thing to not do something because you're afraid of the person. It's another thing not to do something because you are aware of certain outcomes that you just don't want to experience. I know a lot of people that have never known a borderline personality disorder, and they'll tell you this. Well, if you just sit down with them and tell them you love them and you care about them, but here's something that needs to change, it'll really go okay. That's not true. There are a lot of people that you could tell somebody they love them till the cows come home. I'm from Texas. But when you get to the negative part, they didn't hear that. And all of a sudden, in the case of a borderline, you're banished from the kingdom forever until you earn your way back, which could be 6 days, 6 weeks, or 6 months till you get back in. What am I saying? I'm saying that you can't just label everything as codependency when somebody is attached to a sick person. What about this? What about that you're traumatically paralyzed because you're devastated? Last Sunday, I heard the story of a woman who had been a police officer for 13 years. And I met this woman, I shook her hand. It almost killed me with that handshake. She was strong and she was bright and she was courageous. And you know what? She stayed in that abusive relationship. Why? Because she kept thinking it's going to get better. And it never did. Now, I think that was a codependent kind of situation, false hopes, all of that, until one day he threatens to kill her with her own gun that she owned as a police officer. Well, what's my point about that? That sounds like codependency. Yeah, it is. Which, if a strong woman who carries a gun and has a strong handshake and is very bright can get into an abusive, codependent relationship, maybe you ought to give yourself a break. Anybody can do it. It's not just the weak that get in these kinds of situations. So, what do we do when we find ourselves there? Well, don't try to do anything alone. Even the greatest heroes get assistance in trying to accomplish something that seems impossible. In fact, I've seen Mission Impossible movies. I've seen the TV show. When he finally accepts that mission, that the tape or whatever tells him about, when he accepts it, well, there was the Impossible Mission Force that came along to help him accomplish that. Every superhero I know gets assistance, and we need to do the same thing. So you get help. If you're in a situation that isn't healthy, where there's not a good outcome, you find a counselor. You go to an Al-Anon or a codependency group. You start to align with some other people who've been there, who've done it, who maybe believe more in you than even you do. And they encourage you and they help you to get better. And you start to go from survival goals to you see a vision of your life separate and apart from all of this, and you head that direction. Now, that's the beginning. Get the assistance. If you possibly can, you get a counselor. Anybody can go to a codependency group or an Al-Anon group. It's the beginning. Then you can make some really good decisions based on what you're experiencing there. They will help you build your confidence. They'll help you eradicate all of that irrational thinking to where now you're really dealing with the truth of the situation on a day-to-day basis. It's one thing to be weak and have no options and be labeled as this helpless, codependent. That's a horrible place to be. But if you're there, you've got some great potential of things getting so much better, so very much better. And then if you're not one of those weak people, sometimes it's harder for you to get help because everything looks like you got it going for you. Whatever it is, get the help that you need. I was talking to a young woman today who's in a dating relationship, and the boyfriend said, I've had a pornography problem. I've dealt with it. One day I'll tell you all of the details about it. I said to her, well, you know what? I think we ought to be hearing those details today, because there are certain situations where those details might cause you to say, I can't go forward here. So rather than roll over, play dead, be nice, that is not the goal of life, is to be nice. We need to feel that we're deserving the truth. We're deserving respectful behavior. We're reserving something better than to be a doormat to a dictator. If you need some help with codependency, why don't you call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE. Thank you for joining me for Going Deeper. I hope something I've said may have helped just a little bit. If you have a question you'd like me to answer or comment, just email me at stevesocial@newlife.com. I'll see you next time.
If you want to support Going Deeper with Stephen Arterburn, be sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. And if you know someone who would benefit from this episode, be sure to share it with them. See you on the next Going Deeper with Stephen Arterburn from New Life Ministries.